So about 3 years ago, before we came here, my wife and I made a visit to a care home, and I wanted to share with you something that happened there. It was very, very special. There was a woman, a good friend of ours named Sue Spears. It was her last, what we found out to be her last day on earth. And I'm sharing this with you not to be morbid or anything, but just to share with you the great testament of the Spirit. And Jennifer and I were sitting by her bedside, and she was lucid enough within her thinking for me to ask of her, Sue, what have you learned in your life? She was a woman of considerable achievement in career and relationships and so forth, and she struggled to sit up. And in her still playful way, first I said, do you know who I am? Because she was kind of in and out, in between two worlds. She said, oh yes, well, of course, Rev Bruce. But then I said, well, what have you learned? What would you like to share in this last time of your life? And she looked at me and she said, love, love, love. So glad I came. And then she fell back on her bed, and she kind of went into another space, and within 4 hours she passed. But that was so profound for me. I wasn't going to broach the question, but I felt guided to. And that has proved to be my experience here. Last week I was gifted by something very, very special. It was not presented to me in this velvet, but it surely does warrant having such a beautiful wrapping to it. It was gifted to me by Robert and Patricia Smith, who are here today. And when I told Robert I was going to be presenting it, he said, oh no, kind of humbly but lovingly. Patricia was kind of like that too. This is a symbol that that is at Unity Village on the buildings there. And my first talk here, second talk, 2 years ago, I talked about the winged soul. It's wood, carved for Reverend Bruce Kellogg, April 2019, by Robert B. Smith. Love, 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 so glad I came. So this symbol is back at the Unity Village in Lee Summit, Missouri, where about 5 of our chaplains are. They are participating in the Nehemiah retreat back there, and they get free room and board, and they're just participating and volunteering there. They have that once a year where people can go and help out at Unity Village and also take in the culture and the width and breadth of the unity movement, which I have been involved in for 45 years now. Seems amazing to me, but that's so, from a very young age. And this symbol is on all the entranceways of some of the administration building, the publishing building, and Silent Unity. It's a pre-Christian symbol. In fact, it was in a lot of the Egyptian art, the hieroglyphs in some of the temples, and also in the Persian spirituality. So it is a universal symbol, the winged soul, which is our birthright as spiritual beings. That even though we have our lives and our challenges in our mental, emotional, and physical ways, back 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years ago, there was this symbol in the art that continues to remind us of what it is that we are. And unity is the symbol of the self with a capital S. The winged soul. And that is what I have been in promotion of the entire time that I've been in ministry. Here, Arizona, Tennessee, Kansas City, and in Sacramento. Our signage here out on our sign says that this is a center of awakening. And that is what the intention is of this place. And it always has been, and I hope it will always be that. A center for awakening to the actual self. And that has been the singular thread throughout all of time, really. In the, quote, mystery schools of the planet, whether in Egypt or Persia or ancient Greece or India or the Christian mysticism, throughout all time, there has been this intention for humanity to awaken. That is the goal. That is the intention. I'm so glad that opened up to me at a very early age. And I'm so glad that we're sharing this time together in this moment around that intention also. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of the Unity Movement, looked at consciousness as the way to awaken. And he talked about 3 levels of consciousness. The conscious mind that you and I focus with and are present to in this very moment. The subconscious mind, which is the storehouse of all memory. And the superconscious mind, which we could call the Christ mind. But superconscious is perhaps more acceptable to a broader audience, and we want to be inclusive and not have people turn away from this universality of the intention of the Spirit for our lives, which is good, which is expansion, which is to become one with the one. The winged soul, untethered from the worries and cares and concerns of the earth, to be in the world but not of the world, to live our lives one moment to the next in the freedom of the self. And my own interiority once simply said to me at 4 a.m. on the balcony of my home, "Stay close to me, and I will stay close to you." Very, very important. So what have we learned? That's an individual inside job. each one of us have learned something, hopefully. I've learned a great deal of being here with you. And so this process of the subconscious and conscious and superconscious mind is really about addressing the memories within the subconscious mind, because we already are what we're seeking. We already are the winged soul. We have simply accepted certain tethers that have kept us from full claiming of that great truth. And that is what the core of spirituality is, at least to me. It's not about learning new techniques or the latest this, that, or the other. It is really claiming and accepting and allowing this superconscious mind, this Christ mind that Paul spoke of, Christ in you, the hope of glory, to allow it to express through us and to release that which is not true. It's kind of like buying a fixer-upper home. You go into the home and you see that there's lots that needs to be done. The windows need to be cleaned. They're opaque with dirt and dust, and there's disrepair. But you have the vision to know that it can be done and that it will become a beautiful home. So you set out to clean it, to vacuum and dust and polish the beautiful wood floors and repaint the walls. Do whatever needs to be done with the electrical, to make it a wonderful sanctuary for you and your family. And that is really what it means to be about this spiritual work. It's about an interior preparation for the new residency of spiritual energy and spiritual truth and spiritual love that is just waiting. It's always been there in potential, but that our endeavor is just simply to uncover the inherent beauty that is already there. For each of us are a house of God. It is projected oftentimes through coming to a place that this is the house of God. This is just a container, a beautiful one, an important one, for the cultivation of this conversation. But the truth of the matter is that you are the temple of God. You are the church. So we set out, once we hear this good word, we set out in our house cleaning and we do what we need to do in order to have it be a wonderful place of warmth and hospitality and beauty. So spirituality is really something about removing what is not true about us. It's just releasing that which is not true. And yet we hold on to these core beliefs, don't we, in terms of what we think we are and what they told me I was. But the actual is something that is so much more wonderful than that. All of that is just made up. what we actually are is a host to God. And I came across this little story that I'd like to share that I feel is relevant to this awakening process. So there's a man that was in India, and he was passing by a compound of elephants. And he suddenly stopped, confused by the fact that these huge creatures were being held by only a small rope tied to their front leg. No chains, no cages. It was obvious that the elephants could at any time break away from their bonds, but for some reason they didn't. And he saw a trainer nearby and asked why these animals just stood there and made no attempt to get away. Well, the trainer said, when they were very young and much smaller, we used the same size rope to tie them up. And at that age, it's enough to hold them. As they grow up, they are conditioned to believe they cannot break away. They believe the rope can still hold them, so they never try to break free. And you and I are certainly not elephants. But the analogy is, it has a ring of truth to it in terms of how we hold ourselves sometimes tethered to circumstances and conditions where all the while we could just simply break free. And that, learning how to just let go, is one aspect of the core of these teachings. Paramahansa Yogananda said, and he is one great teacher of mine, this great yogi from the East came to the West in 1920 to be a light to the world because it was the time of the blending of the East and the West, to help people to break those cords. He said, God is not transcendent, but immanent. Here, and in a way, it's like a divine romance. Us with our God is a divine romance. And yet we have this inertia. And an inertia, both collectively and personally, is defined as the resistance of any physical object to change in velocity, direction, or motion. There's so many people that I converse with, including myself, that we have this inertia. Why don't we claim who we truly are? It's an interesting dynamic of human consciousness. And I feel that it is within this phase of mind, the subconscious mind, that through inspiration, through divine love, through our caring and sharing with each other, dissolves that content and cleans the slate so that we are open and receptive to be inspired by the superconscious mind or the Christ mind. What have we learned? Another aspect of what I have learned is like Lynn McTaggart talks about the field. The field is this field of energy that you and I live and move and have our being in. It's here right now. Christ's teachings say the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It is within. It's here. That's the good news. If we simply just turn to it and allow the divine romance. But Lynn McTaggart says that there is a quickening and a grace that can transpire through this being in the field. And if I think about Unity of Vancouver, it has its own field of possibility and divine love, and that through our nurturance of it, it can continue to grow and be a place where there is this wonderful transformation that can happen in this very room. Truth be known, we need this energy. I was listening to CBC the other day, and they were commenting upon how Vancouver is has one of the highest levels in all of Canada for loneliness. Did you know that? Well, being lonely is something of personal responsibility. But as human beings, we have the opportunity to shift that. Loneliness is not just a malady of a big city. That's a malady of the whole human family. And that when we decide and choose and to allow this beauty of divine energy within us to expand and to expand, the loneliness just disappears. And we stand within the light of our own being in true happiness. Just the other day, I was meeting with a rabbi. Beautiful man. He was more than a rabbi. He was a voice. And this may sound kind of weird to you, but oh well. I went over to his home. And I want to share this with you because it's really good. Not just as a story, but as a reality. I sat down across from him at his table. And I said, I don't understand why there are sometimes so much drought between times of inspiration. Like walking through a desert. And where's the oasis? I dedicate myself day in and day out to this practice. Why? This rabbi said to me, this man is very clairvoyant. He said, Bruce, Jesus is here. And he wants to tell you that if you remember him in everything that you do, he will be with you every moment. That you have gone through these cycles of aloneness or separation or whatever, so that you can learn to be compassionate with all people. Can any of you relate to this? You may not have visitations by Jesus. But when he told me that, my whole body lit up. And I have this thing that's been going on with me for the last 4 or 5 years, that when I hear truth, my whole body lights up. I can distinguish between what's true and what's malarkey. This is a gift of discernment. So it's like, and I'm not trying to say that this is special, okay? Any more special than anybody else in this room. All we need to do is call upon this good in order for it to come, because of who we are, because of our actual heritage and our design as spiritual beings. So what have I learned? God is present. Anytime we call. Even a rabbi who doesn't necessarily even know Jesus as other than another rabbi, was freed up. To say. So we need each other. And that's why in this room, every week we have these moments of getting up and greeting each other. Namaste. I behold the Christ in you. I see it in you. You are part of the divine, and we are together. And this is going into the 21st century, farther into the 21st century, what I feel will be the needs of spiritual community will be to say, yeah, we're in this together. It's like a rope. One strand of the rope can barely hold 2 pounds of weight, but 200 strands of rope can handle 200 pounds. And 2,000 strands of rope together can handle 2,000 pounds. Together, we are strong. Singularly, we have our path. But together, as one united humanity, that's where our strength is. And so, in closing, my dear friend Sue Spears, her last words with you, my last words here on this Sunday. Love, love, love. So glad I came. Thank you.